thank everybody for being here today. This is a special time to say thank you to a special person. Champ Covington has done a lot for this community, and we could certainly talk about any individual things. I think Ben Haskew's here from the Chamber and all of his Chamber activities and United Way and community service. But we're here to particularly commemorate Champ's leadership. It's just he found himself, and thank goodness for this community, the right man in the right place. George Fletcher and those who had this incredible idea of enticing Clemson University to come and play a part in Greenville, and Greenville to play a part in Clemson. Well, like all great ideas, it still takes money and it still takes a lot of moving parts to make it happen. And just as the vision and the concept of Clemson to Greenville started to become a reality, and this property began to be on the radar screen for something out here, along came Champ Covington and his key leadership role with the Infrastructure Bank. In those days, the Infrastructure Bank was doing, under his leadership, was doing big things. In fact, they were doing a lot of big things, including widening the 385 project here in Greenville and so many other things. But none of them quite can compare to what happened out here, because this was a piece of property that at that time was outside the city of Greenville, and a piece of property that was just wooded and really nothing happening, of course. And thanks to Champ's leadership, he was able to make that vision that George and so many others had for Clemson-ICAR and for what this area might look like, make it happen. Because it all started with a road, Millenium Blvd. And it was indeed, in the beginning, just a mark on a map. But that mark on a map always had a vision behind it. And from the very beginning of the meetings with Greenville City Council and with the Chamber and others, Champ played the key role in making that mark turn into a beautiful landscape boulevard, an environmental model, as he called it at the time, and a boulevard along which would become the home of Clemson-ICAR and many other great opportunities for Greenville. And Hubble, of course, came along a little later too to help realize that vision. But Champ, I'll never forget those early meetings, because this was just a piece of property that people had heard you couldn't get here except by off-road vehicle. We just knew about the shopping district down this way. But with your help, we conspired from early days to, number one, to annex the property into the city of Greenville, thus giving Clemson University, I think, a lot more confidence that a project out here would be done right, because it would be done in partnership with the city of Greenville. Then, of course, the effort to gain the funding for this road. And something I particularly appreciate, and the city does from the very beginning, was not just funding for a road. It was always going to be what you see today. It was going to be a boulevard to the highest standard, with the trees and the landscaping, indeed a magnet for economic development for the upstate of South Carolina. And it simply would not have happened if the right man hadn't been at the right place at the right time, and that man was Champ Covington.
Champ has always been a role model of mine for public service. When he was head of the State Infrastructure Bank, he appointed me to the committee to evaluate the projects, which was great fun. Then I had to follow he and Merle as chairman of the Chamber. Merle ought to have been a Baptist preacher. I hated having to speak after him. And then Champ and Jean were head of United Way before Sarah and I. You've been great role models, and I thank you for all you've done. I want to give you just a few stories to put a little bit of meat on what Knox was talking about. The project actually started when President Barker came to Greenville and looked he held a summit to see what the proper role for Clemson and Greenville was going to be. This was in the summer of 2000, and the conclusion was it ought to be a research park around our major industry. Shortly thereafter, I wrote Mr. Barker and volunteered to chair the task force, and we had our first meeting in November. And I got a call from Joe Swan just shortly before the meeting, and he said, listen, he said, we have this idea for a $50 million wind tunnel for testing race cars. He said, do you think it's too rednecky for Greenville? And I said, hey, we are what we are. But The project was really a wind tunnel and a bunch of outlying laboratories, safety, environmental, fluid dynamics. These were industrial buildings that could have been put anywhere. But fortunately, Don also had a commitment from a race team to do a museum for fallen motorsports heroes. So he wanted interstate frontage. Doug Harper agreed to chair a subcommittee, Bill Workman and a bunch of others, and we identified 5 sites. But the one Clemson liked best was this one, which at that time was owned by the Hollingsworth Trust. Mr. Hollingsworth had passed away shortly before that, and the trust was willing to sell some land to generate some estate taxes. Fast forward 2 years. We had a developer. We owned the property. Ben Rook had done a site design that absolutely everybody loved. Blvd had gotten involved, and the project was now more of an automotive research park than a wind tunnel. Doug Harper and I went to see Champ. In your office at Nelson Mullins, we said, would the infrastructure bank be willing to fund the road, $12 million? And he said, yes. I mean, it was unequivocal, yes. I wrote the application on behalf of the county. We submitted it. 2 months later, Champ, the infrastructure bank, approved the project. Just terrific leadership on your part. You got a bunch of grief at that time. Why is the infrastructure bank funding a road for a private developer? Champ said, this project will employ 20,000 people one day. Of course, it was front page news, Greenville News, and on the TV stations. I think he was a visionary, and I think one day it will employ 20,000 people. There's been $250 million investment out here. It's a source of pride for the city, for the county, in fact, for the whole state of South Carolina. If I could do an ICAR for all of our clusters, I'd love to see it happen. But let me say this, and let me just close with the fact that that $12 million road was absolutely crucial at that point of the project. And maybe ICAR would have happened, but it would have been much longer down the road. Champ, thank you. I think it happened because of you.
During a lot of the time that Champ was in these leadership roles, I was next door in Spartanburg County, but I did get to know Champ and got to know a lot about what was going on in Greenville at the time. And I did a little research, Champ. When he took over as chairman of the chamber in 1998, he said, I'm going to be the transportation chairman. And that year, Knox, I think the $350 million from the infrastructure bank came for some of the 385 projects and other things that happened. Ground was broken on the Southern Connector that year. Leadership Greenville, Class 24, also had done some work, again with the city, on the master planning for the Reedy River Basin. So that was a great year, and it was a great opportunity for this community to move forward. I said to Champ earlier, and you can look at a number of developments, that really development follows infrastructure. And this infrastructure that was put in place, of course, opened the door for CU-ICAR, for Hubble lighting, and the other things that will come, as George described. And I think we are going to see much more development out here. We're going to see the kind of job creation over time that I think we're all going to be proud of. And Champ's leadership leading up to his chairmanship of the chamber in 1998 and the years since has just been a tremendous benefit to our broader community and his tireless efforts to make Greenville better. Champ, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
Those of you who do not know, and those of us here already know, Champ's involvement in Greenville County and what he has done for us over a long period of time, and it sustained itself because of the quality of his work, his visionary outlook on what Greenville could be and should be, and he went about the business of trying to make it happen. We all have benefited from your labors. We thank you for your courage, and we thank you for your vision.
Thank you. 3, 2, 1. Mr. Covington.
You know, it's a very interesting situation, and really the person who enabled me to be a part of this was David Wilkins. And I got a call from David when he went down to that time see Governor Beasley, and he said, Champ, I have asked that you be given the job and the opportunity to run the State Infrastructure Bank. I said, David, I've never even heard of such a thing. I don't know what it is and whatnot. He said, well, you can do the job. And I will always appreciate that. And many people don't know much about David in terms of all the great things he does, because this one was very private. But David Wilkins, obviously, as ambassador to Canada and everything else, was an extraordinary person for the community. But we were in New York meeting with the various bond raters and whatnot in terms of getting, we only use revenue bonds, no GO bonds, and the obvious benefit in that is it's not a general obligation of the state and doesn't take money away from prisons and other places where those GO bonds are needed. And we just were able to go up to New York and get the various creditors and raters, and we ended up with an excellent rating for the state of South Carolina, which didn't surprise me. But we never had an interest rate during that period of time of over 4.2%, and this was not the time when rates were down that far. But we had a track record and a proven record, and a lot of it was due to the leadership, I think, that was shown by not only Governor Beasley but Governor Hodges, and it was just done right, and it was a privilege to be a part of that. David Wilkins called me, though, and he said, Champ, we've had a 6-car wreck, or excuse me, an automobile crossed over the lanes on 385 about 10 miles outside of Columbia, and it crossed the median and hit head-on with a car, and a family of 6 was killed. And it was on a rainy day, icy day, and he said, what can we do about it? And I said, well, Dave, if you'll give me just a few minutes or a few days, we'll take a look at it. So we got $40 million allocated from the State Infrastructure Bank. So now when you go down 276 and come through Malden to get to there, you'll notice these barriers, these steel barriers that go down, and we have only had one crossover in what amounts to about 12 years down there, and that was not a death. It's amazing, and David was the one who thought about it, and he was upset about the fact that it was that easy to be involved in an accident like that, and he said we need to get it done. And that's just the way David Wilkins did things, and I'm proud of him. I've always been grateful that we were happy to, he did so much for this community and being a part of it. But that to me benefited not only this community, but anybody going to the beach from Ohio or wherever it may be. Benefited from that, and as I said, there's only been one crossover. We now have infrastructure banks which serve Rock Hill, Myrtle Beach, Conway, Greenville, Anderson, Spartanburg, ICAR. I think Bob Giolis and President Barker have done an incredible job with ICAR and the reputation that we've earned and the number of people that are coming here as a result. In addition to that, I should point out that Cliff Rosen, who bought this property and hired Tom Wells, he had a vision, and frankly, if you take a look at this property, Cliff is one of the best developers in Florida, all over the southeast, and I know there was a period in there where it was tough to get along with Cliff or whomever it was involved. But Cliff owns still the majority of this property, and it's on the other side of the interstate, and it's down Malden Road. And I hope that we can come up with a master plan that will really fit in here, because the design that we had in mind ultimately would include housing that when German folks who were involved with BMW came over, or anyone else, we would be able to see that there were restaurants within this community, retail stores, office buildings, the whole ball of wax. And there have been 3 buildings going up over there, and hopefully we'll get those filled soon. But it's a spectacular opportunity for Greenville, and I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of so many folks that helped with it. The Ogletree firm was heavily involved, and a lot of others. We've got an opportunity, and somebody needs to jump hold of what can happen here in the master plan and have a lot of input on this, because it's special. And I don't think there'll be anything like that in this country. certainly people don't want to end up in Detroit with the automobile industry. And this is the right place and the right time to get it done. I actually played a very small part in this, but there was a lot of support from everybody, and I appreciate every bit of it. It's interesting now that where we are, we have invested now. The state infrastructure bank in infrastructure improvements in this state has put in and has improved, and hopefully will continue to improve, over $2 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money even to the folks in Washington who are throwing it around right and left. But $2 billion in this state for infrastructure improvement is strong. We were voted the best infrastructure bank in the country, and I think for the years I was there, and I think for the years since then, because we do it right and we've got good support. So Knox, I thank you, and but I still want to be involved, and if anybody needs me to help in any way, shape, or form, I probably am not qualified to do so now, but I would still love to do that. So thank you for being here.